Hey, what's going on, everybody? Back out here with the TL. So if you've been following this at all, I've done a bag build on the channel for this car, and it has 3S on it currently, Airlift 3S with the controller. We did the controller install on the channel, we did the full build, and we also just put bellows on the front to replace the front sleeves that come with the Airlift kit. So instead of having front air sleeves, this now has front bellows. And we have the final missing piece to the puzzle today, I'm hoping, and we have the 3P manifold. Okay, so there is the 3S manifold. As you can see, we got the 3P here. So we're going to go ahead, swap out the good old 3S right there, and we're going to see if we can get this car to function way better with 3P. As of right now, if you look at the other parts of the build, this car doesn't come up. Well, it didn't come up, I should say, on one air up. Since we put the front bellows in, it kind of comes up on one air up. Functions a lot better than it did initially with just the front sleeves. But now that it has bellows, it almost comes up on one air up with the full tank. But the issue is the managing of pressure in this car with the 3S is subpar at best. It's not good. It doesn't tell you what's in each corner. It has a lot of issues as far as managing the air correctly, going from corner to corner. It's just, it could be a lot better, just to be honest. And I like Airlift, I like all their products, but in my opinion, the 3S has some more to be desired. But other than that, the car looks great. You know, the 3S has done its job. It gives it the look. It could be, you know, aggressive looking, air it out. You can air up. It does what it needs to do, but it's just not as user-friendly as the 3P. So today is the day. We are throwing 3P on this, and we're going to see if we can finally get this thing to function good, be user-friendly, come up in one air up, and just have an overall better experience with air suspension with the 3P versus 3S. And this is a good test to see how it functions on a car from 3S to 3P. So I'm not sure if many people have done this. I've yet to see anybody do it, go from a 3S manifold to a 3P, and just, you know, kind of overview the experience between the two. So that's what we're about to do. We're going to see if we can get this thing to function better with this 3P. So let's go ahead and get it in. All right, so as we saw, here is our setup in the trunk. Two Viair 444C compressors. Got a 5-gallon tank here. And of course, the 3S manifold is right there, which is what we're going to be swapping now. I do a lot of how-to videos, but this isn't really going to be a how-to. I'm not going to go through every step. You know, I have to take the back seats out, you know, the bottom half, the upper half. We're going to get this out just so we can get access to where I have everything ran, all the air lines, and just have good access so we can get this swapped out with the new harness and everything. So I'm not going to get into removing the seats and all that nonsense. If you kind of want to see me do it, I have it in the other parts when I first put the air suspension in this car. So we're just going to go ahead and get this out. And once I have everything out, we have access to the harness and all the air suspension components, will bring it back in. So let's go ahead and get this out. All right, back seat, top and bottom out. So as you can see, we have access to all my pretty wiring and air line running here. It's going to suck to uninstall, but it's all right. We're going to make the 3P harness just as pretty as I did with the 3S. So there's our manifold. Let's go ahead and get this thing out, and then we'll go ahead and get our 3P in here. All right, so as you can see, I got all my air lines marked up, so I know which one is what when I go to reinstall these air lines into the 3P, so no confusion there. So now that we have all this marked up, I can go ahead and get into uninstalling it. So I did disconnect the power wire from the battery, so I mean, really, you could unplug this either way, but I did it just to be on the safe side since we're going to be uninstalling and reinstalling a new harness. And from here, obviously, you just need to remove the air lines, and I'm going to take out my bolts retaining it, but should be able to push these in, release our air lines, and the car is aired out, so there's no air pressure going to these lines, so should be a bit easier to pull them out. So I'm going to go ahead and get all these air lines out. We'll get the manifold off, and then from there, we'll go ahead and get into the harness. All right, guys, I got both of my self-tap and retaining screws for the manifold out, so this bad boy should be free. There it is, guys. 3S manifold, completely uninstalled. So we're gonna go ahead, clean this up a bit, and I'm gonna go ahead and get the rest of this wiring harness out. Then we'll go ahead and worry about getting a 3P manifold and all that in. All right, guys, you can see the harness and where it's running, and got the wires coming from the compressors into the relays, and got our harness wire right here, which is now free. So I should be able to free some of this up, and we can go ahead and start breaking loose all my beautiful install work and do it all over again. All right, so I got access to pretty much everything. Everything's coming apart here, so there we go. Go ahead and finish up installing all our wires. This is the wire from the pressure switch, because keep in mind 3S is a pressure switch. We will no longer need that, so I'm just gonna get all this harness uninstalled and keep it moving. All right, guys, got the 3S fully uninstalled back here. The harness and the main relay, power source, and everything right here is out. So as you can see, all we're left with is our compressor wires, and I use a distribution block for the compressors. That's how I typically do air suspension, like a system. Just have one main power wire coming from the battery, and then I use a distribution block to have both compressors, if you're doing a dual compressor setup, to go both in to that block. So everything is out, and as you can see, this is what's left. Is just a little bit of the harness here that we just got to trace up to the front and fully uninstall. So everything back here is good. Don't have to worry about anything else back here. We can use all this to set up with the new harness and the new 3P setup. So all this is good. We're just going to remove the rest of this harness going through the rails of the car all the way up to the front, and then we'll go ahead and get into installing the 3P. All right, so there you can see, got this cover off of the sill right here, and you can see how I had it running, and it's pretty clean. Can't even really tell up front here. So I had it nice and tucked, running along with the factory wiring. So I'm gonna go ahead, pull all this out, and then we're gonna do the same thing with the 3P wiring and run it exactly how this is. So just gotta pull this out and redo it basically. Cut my beautiful zip tie work here. Hurts, hurts. There she goes. So we're just going to keep on tracing this all the way up to the front. All right, so as you can see, got this traced up to the front. The rest of our harness is sitting right here for the 3S on the seat. So this is the ignition wire, so I just have to get that removed and I can reattach the new one. And then obviously this is just a controller wire. It's running right over here, so you pull the controller out and you can just trace that under, and we'll fully have this harness out, and then we can get into installing the 3P harness and then get the 3P mounted, and then we'll have 3P officially installed in this car. So let's finish getting this 3S harness out. All right, guys, there we have it. Just had to trace the wire up to the controller. That's the USB that plugs in, plugs right into the harness right there. There's a remainder of our harness, guys. So I'm just going to put this all neatly together with the old 3S harness, and then we'll go ahead and start getting into putting in the 3P. All right, so there is the entire 3S wiring harness. So that's the wiring harness with the controller. I did make this harness myself. You can check out part 1 to see how this fell in line, how to make a harness for the 3S if you're curious, or if you need to know for a dual compressor setup. But here is our 3P wiring harness. Now, speaking of dual compressor setup, this needs to have a dual compressor setup as well. Now, I didn't realize when he got this harness that it's missing the dual compressor wiring harness. There's an attachment that goes on to the 3P. See if I can show you guys real quick. Here it is, right into this terminal. There'll be a terminal from the dual compressor harness, and then I'll give you another relay and another connection for the extra compressor. So unfortunately, we only have the main wiring harness, which is this, and we do not have the dual compressor harness. But what we're going to do is throw this in. We got the other one on order, so as soon as it comes in, I can just add the second compressor harness, and everything's already there. It'd be easy just to wire up with this in addition to the compressor being in the car. So we should be all right. So we're still going to go ahead, keep going with the install. I'm going to go ahead and put our new harness in. Pretty much just going to replace and take spot of the old 3S harness. So we're going to go ahead, start putting this thing in and getting the 3P all set up. All right, guys, harness is in car. So it's just a matter of putting this stuff where it's going to fall in line. So I'm just going to start getting everything set up back here, put everything in place, and get everything set up as to how we want it in the rear. So everything here is falling into place, and then we can start running everything down to the front and then get everything set up at the front. So we're going to go ahead and map everything out back here with the harness, and then we'll get into running the wires. All right, guys, here is our work area. So start getting this thing in place. Pull everything through here. All right, got all the wiring done back here as we just reviewed. Got everything going up to the front now. Just carefully place it back where it was, tucked it nicely all the way to the front here. See, we got it nice and hidden. Wires right back where it was. Got our ignition source back tucked away and connected. Everything is good. Controller is ran. And then we have the 3P controller, same spot. So everything just pretty much fell right back to where it was. It's just instead of having the 3S wiring and harness and controller, it's the 3P. So everything is installed, guys. Keep in mind, we only have the one compressor. So this is not dual compressor right now, as we don't have the other harness. You know, we should have that soon, and then we can get that thrown in here, and this will be perfect and finalized. But that's only going to go in right here in the trunk. We don't have to run anything up to the front or anything like that in order to get that tapped in. So probably leave the back seat out until it comes in, and then we can just connect it right up. But for where we're at right now, everything is plugged up, everything is connected, everything is ran. 3P is officially installed, guys. So I think it's time to test it out and see what we're looking at. All right, guys, everything is connected up, plugged in back there, and we got everything ran, everything's connected, plugged up. 3P is installed, guys. So moment of truth. Controller's right here. We'll go ahead and turn her on. Let's see if we get power. All right, she's on, as is the controller. Controller is on. So it's gonna pump up. It's not calibrated right now. So I'm happy that you can hear it. You can hear it running. The compressor's running the one. We don't have much air in there at all, so it's not calibrated. We have to go through the setup. What I'm going to do is I wanted a rough estimate of where it was at, so I put a little bit of air in there. I'm going to shoot some more air in there so the compressor doesn't have to work real hard. I'm going to turn it off, and then we'll come back, set this thing up. All right, guys, so I pumped it up with a separate compressor into the tank, and I let it run for a hair more. We got to like 147, so let's turn this thing back on, see where we're at, make sure we're holding pressure. The compressor should not kick on because it's at 147. Yep, still at 147. Now, to go through the calibration steps, you really want it on a perfectly flat ground. I can't say that I'm on that right now, so I'm just going to go through a test motion. You can go back, and this will bring you to the manual mode. So this is just manual mode to make sure everything works. You can shoot airs into each corner and see where you're at. This is, you know, obviously not set up. It says invalid mount, and it'll say pressure calibration, so might be a little hard to see with the focus there, but this is not set up, like I said. But we're just going to hit it and make sure that we have functionality of the system and that we can get air into our corners, and it's aired out right now because we had to disconnect the manifold from the 3S, and all the air has to be out to do that, to disconnect the line. So let's see where we're at. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, this thing's coming up, guys. compressor's coming back on, but let's just go see where this is at. There it is, guys. So we're airing up. I'm gonna see if I can get that front to shoot up as well. As you saw, we just did the rear, but I'm gonna get the front shot up. We're gonna get this thing up manually, and then from there we'll go ahead and go through the motions, set it up, and see how this thing functions. All right, guys, there it is, manually aired up in the front. So I just relocated the car since I aired it up. It's about as high as she goes up in the front, which is what it was doing before, so I'm not pressed on that. It's where we got it adjusted to with the 3S on the last part. We did the bellows, so there it is, guys. That's aired up. But now the goal here is to get this calibrated, and we're going to see if we can get this thing to function with presets like ideally it should, and the whole car shoot up on one air up. Because if you look, that's a lot of pressure in those front bags. In my car, for example, which is a 9th gen SI 2015, it only takes 50 pounds to get the front even higher than it is on this right now. And as you can see how much air we got in these front bellow bags, and that's crazy considering that we swapped them, and sleeves usually require that kind of air. So regardless, this car just needs a lot of pressure in the front for it to come up and function. It really needs a lot of air, and in my opinion, it's probably just from the heavy 3.7, and it's just a heavier car up front. So, you know, that's probably one of the main reasons, I would think anyway, that it requires a lot of air to get those fronts up, especially now that it is bellow bags. You know, it's still taking a lot of air. So we're gonna go ahead, turn this thing off. I'm gonna go ahead and get this thing completely shut down, and then we're going to start it back up, and we're going to go through the motions and do the system calibration, guys. So let's go ahead and see if we can get this thing calibrated. All right, guys, so if you can see here, the glare is not making it ideal, but we're in the calibration setup. So we're just going to go through these questions. Usually doesn't take too long. Answer a few questions, and then it'll start putting pressure to the front and the rear, and it'll start moving around. Is the vehicle free of any obstructions? Yes. Is the manifold mounted? Yes. Do you have 1 or 2 compressors? Well, we have 2, but only set up for 1 right now. So we're going to select the 1. We're going to do auto. We do not have height sensors. It's now going to move. Are we ready? Yeah, we're ready. Let's go. All right, so we're going through the motions here. It's going to probably do a little bit of airing up and airing down. Hear a little bit of pressure and things like that. So there we go. Front dumping, as is the rear. You can hear the manifold making noise. This is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. So I'm gonna go ahead and let this thing calibrate, and then we'll see how she is after. All right, guys, here it is. Just finished up. The calibration is successful. System ready to use. So if we hit OK, the pressure should kick on because we're under 135. So anytime it drops below that, the compressor will kick on. So I'm going to go ahead and let this thing build pressure back up, and then we'll go ahead and see if we can mess with some presets. All right, guys, so I got it manually pressured up to where I want our main middle preset to be, which will be the ride height. So 135 is about the max that you can get. It can go up to about 139, but it struggles. So it's not a bad ride height. We got clearance. This thing is driven a lot lower with 3S considering where it's at right now. And if I really wanted to, I could go in there and adjust the struts a little more, but they have been adjusted and they're pretty far out already, but it's pretty good. 75 in the rear, 135 in the front. So that's where we're at. Flat surface. That's where we calibrated it, of course. So we're gonna go ahead, set this preset, and we'll see if it works. All right, so we're locked in. As you can see, if you just tap the middle button once, it shows you where the setting is set, 50 in all corners. So we're gonna hold this, and the preset is saved. So all I did was hold it, and it saved it. So this is now saved as our middle preset button. Let's go ahead and see what the bottom is. 25s in all corners. Let's air it out. See what 25 in each corner is looking like. It's pretty dumped. Actually, it's probably about perfect, and it's probably about where this was airing out before. Gives it a little bit of air to start with too, instead of being straight at 0, which technically you can go to 0 and you should be able to go to 0, but you know, it always helps to have a little bit of air already in there. All right, so 25 in each corner. This is what we're looking like. She's on the ground, I would say, just about anyway. You can get a little bit lower, but here we have it, guys. This is 25. That's what we're probably going to rock with for right now as our bottom preset. So now the main question is going to come into play. If we air this back up, press it in a preset, will this thing shoot up in one setting off of a preset? That's what the issue has been since day one with this car, is getting it to air up in unison, front and rear at the same time. So I had it pretty close, almost dialed in with the 3S. You could check the last part just to see, but I think with the actual pressure management of 3P and the preset maintain and just the overall better pressure control, I think we could get this thing to come up in one shot. So I'm gonna go ahead, put the camera down, and we're gonna see if we can get this thing to air up to our preset that we set in the middle, which is 135 up front, 75 in the back. Let's try it out. All right, guys, so it's sitting at 25 on each corner, roughly. So we're dumped, aired out. Let's go ahead, moment of truth, hit that center preset and see if this whole thing will come up off of one preset air up. Ah, I think she does. All right, so that's where it got it to, guys. I gotta check the settings, make sure the preset maintain is on. It only got it to 125. As you know, we did put 135, so it is a little bit off, but the 125, I mean, is probably roughly about the same just as the 135. You can see we got a pretty good profile right there. So I'm gonna go back through the settings, just make sure everything's right. We'll do one more air out and an air up, and we'll see where we're at and see if this thing could come up in one shot again. All right, guys, got preset maintain on. As you can see, it's attempting to get it up to the 135 with the preset maintain. So I just think that's a really high number. I see 3P be way more accurate with lower numbers, like, you know, in the 80s, 50s to 80s. The preset maintain is on point, but I mean, we're pushing the limits with having this at 135, but that's where it needs to be. So nonetheless, it's still doing pretty good considering how 3S was operating, but let's dump it. All right, let's see, she's airing out and we're back on the ground. All right, so back on the ground, guys. We're gonna let that compressor cool off. I've been giving it a lot of up down, a lot of up down, so I'm gonna let it cool off for a minute, then we'll air it back up and see if we can get this thing up in one shot again. All right, so we're at the air out again. Should be roughly 25 in each corner, but we'll take it where it's at. Let's go ahead, double tap that center button, presets a ride, and we'll see where we're at. Yeah, that thing is coming up, guys. See, this has the pressure management that 3S needs desperately. This thing is coming up one shot. You should be able to hit a preset and your whole car should come up. You shouldn't have to fight with it. And as you can see, it's getting this right into spec. Maybe you can't because the glare is absolutely horrific, but you can see it's coming right into where it needs to be. It actually went right up to almost 135 this time. 133, 76 in the rear. It's, you know, about 1 or 2 pounds off typically, but it's, you know, always about pretty accurate. So in my opinion, that's in a good spot right now. And there we have it, guys. Car is aired up, one shot. No more fooling around with it, doing them separately, or, you know, having to let air out so you get a full tank again, so the compressors kick on with the pressure switch. Oh my God, 3P has done tons of justice just in these few air ups that I've done. So in my opinion, I think 3P has solved the issue with this car. It was 3S all along preventing this thing from coming up accurately in one shot, one air up. Check it out. All right, guys, I'm back here at the shop. No longer on the flat ground, but it doesn't really matter because we have it calibrated. I actually changed up the presets just a hair. So that is the dump right there. We got 25 in the front, 18 in the rear. As you can see, it's a couple pounds off, but let's see if we can get this thing up with the air up. And I did adjust the rear hair on the air up. Instead of being 75, it's 70. Still 135 in the front, but let's air this thing up. There it is, guys. This thing comes right up, man. It's amazing. Hasn't had a failed air up yet. So 3P has fixed the issue that we were having with 3S. That and the bellows as well, I'm sure, are playing a part, but there it is, guys. Fully aired up. No more messing around with it. Preset maintained, pressure maintained. We can see what's in each corner. We know it's right. No more guessing. So there it is, guys. This thing is a whole new monster with 3P. All right, so dumped her out again because why not? But where we're at now, as you can see, I still got some interior trim and paneling to put back on. Of course, the back seats, but like I said, we're waiting on the dual compressor harness, so I still have to throw that in. As you can see, we tested everything. Though it's fully functioning, it's fixed our issue we were having. It's doing what we want. So, you know, we got everything installed. You know, everything works. 3P is fully functional in this car now. We just got to add the second compressor and get that harness tied into what we already got. So what I want to do is just go ahead and throw some of this trim back on, and then I'm going to leave the seats out so that way I have access and I can just throw that harness right in when it comes, and we'll finalize this and have it all back together and it'll be ready to go. All right, guys, another day out here with the TL. As you can see, we got some of the paneling and the trim and all that back together. I do have the back seat, just lower back seat anyway, just lately in here, but we do finally have the other harness, the dual compressor harness. So like I said, and as promised, we are going to install this as well to finalize the install and just make sure this is all perfect. As we know, we already tested the 3P. The 3P is fully functional. It's doing everything we wanted to do. So the only thing we got to do is incorporate our second compressor. So 2 compressors. You need the 27703. Unfortunately, when he grabbed the harness, they didn't include this with it, or didn't ask him if he had 1 or 2 compressors, whatever the case was. So we had to get this separately, but we got this 2 days later. Not too bad considering how shipping's been and all that. But we have the harness. What we're going to do, go ahead and get this thing installed, get this back seat back in, and we'll finalize the 3P install in the TL, guys. So let's go ahead and get this thing in. All right, guys, so here's the harness, and if you're unfamiliar with the 3P and the harness setup, this is basically just an additional, you know, wire harness that looks almost identical to what comes with the initial wiring harness, the main harness with the 3P. So if you see, there is a female spade connector there, male here. It's going to plug up. That's what connects the 2 harnesses, and then basically they give you all this wire in here to run to the battery. But you know, as I did it, I have a distribution block coming with our 4 gauge, so 4 gauge in a distribution block, and then I got the compressor wiring from the harness coming out of there. So we just have to run it right to that distribution block. We're going to mount the relay right there opposing, just like as it was when I had a 3S installed. So it'll be a relay here, and we're just going to have to get the compressor right there, the compressor wire you know, tied in, plugged up with the harness, and then it's pretty much installed, guys. Pretty basic. It's just a few connections, and then this harness will be tied with the main harness, and then we'll have full power with both compressors. So let's go ahead and get this harness in. All right, guys, let's go ahead and get this thing installed. So we're just going to run this relay right where I had the 3S relay, and I'm going to put it opposing the other one. So we got some symmetrical relays here. So let's go ahead and get this installed. All right, guys, here is our final product. There we go. Both dual harness and main harness installed. Everything neatly tucked away, ran cleanly with the OE harness right here and wiring. Got our harnesses tucked away here, air lines coming in, opposing relays, everything nice and tucked. Pretty clean in my opinion, guys. So there we go, fully installed. This car is now operating fully under 3P with both compressors. So let's go ahead and test it out for the last time. All right, guys, so now that we have the second compressor wired in for a dual compressor setup with the harness, we can go ahead and set this up in the settings for two compressors, because this is only set up for one in the settings. So if we hit the middle button and the upper button, it'll bring us to the settings menu, go down to calibration, and it says it's calibrated, obviously, because we did it already. But let's go ahead and get this thing calibrated again, and then we'll get this thing locked in for two compressors, and then both of these should kick on and start working and functioning as it should. So let's go ahead and get this thing set up. Calibration successful, system ready to use. Yep. Twice as loud, twice the compressor's working, guys. I don't know how well you can hear it, but both of those things are on. We're gonna fill up way faster than we were with just the one. As you can see, it's climbing up quick because we got the two pumping air in there. So we're good, guys. This is fully installed, fully ready to go, and pretty much seamless at this point. This car is on point with the 3P. So let's get some final shots and some final thoughts, and we'll wrap this thing up. All right, guys, so we got the back seat, all the trim, everything back together, fully installed. System is done. 3P is fully in this car now. And there's a trunk set up for anybody who might not have seen it or forgets what it looks like from the other parts, but looks a little bit different now with no pressure switch being ran off of the manifold harness. And we just have the 3P manifold, so looks a little bit cleaner now. So here is our trunk setup, guys. So overall, 3P is a far superior air suspension system than 3S. This car would not function with 3S, as in it didn't function well. The presets didn't work. If you hit the air up preset from being dumped, it wouldn't come up all the way. The front struggled to come up every time, even when we switched to bellows from sleeves. So this thing has been truly troubled the entire time it had 3S, as far as the pressure regulation and having enough air to manage this car coming up and down with the 3S. 3P has this car at a completely different level, and it makes the air suspension actually enjoyable. So one last time, let's show you how it works, show you how well it's functioning. So we can actually see our pressures now. We got exactly 150 in the tank. It's a beautiful thing, pretty much dialed in at the preset, which would be 135 up front, 70 in the rear. Anywhere from 1 to 3 pound fluctuation between what the preset is normal for pretty much any bag car. It's really nothing to be concerned about. So this is perfect. So let's go ahead, air this thing out. Let's close the doors. There it is, guys, fully dumped, looking great. And let's go ahead and air this thing up with a preset. Oh, it's gonna be beautiful. As you can see, she's coming up. It is steady, giving air to the front as it should. It's fully dialing in that preset. And there we have it, guys. This thing is fully aired up off of one hit of the preset. No more messing around, bringing up the rear first separately from the front because of the 3S not allowing the correct pressure regulation with the presets. 3P has fully solved the issue of the car not coming up in one shot.